Big Trouble in Little China, 1986, felt like pure fantasy. Neon lights, ancient magic, and fearless warriors lurking in Chinatown's shadows. But behind those faces were real lives and brutally real battles. From shocking affairs to sudden deaths, what happened after the film is far darker than anyone expected. Kurt Russell as Jack Burton. Kurt Russell was born on March 17, 1951, in Springfield, Massachusetts, United States. At 35 years old, he played Jack Burton, the loud, overconfident truck driver in Big Trouble in Little China. The character's misplaced bravado quietly reshaped the film, turning it into a cult classic where the supposed hero is often the least in control. That irony traces back to Russell's childhood. Growing up as the son of Bing Russell, he entered professional acting at age 12 under a long Disney contract, working continuously through his teens. While audiences saw success, Russell later admitted the pressure erased any sense of choice, a tension that carried into his adult reinvention in darker roles like Escape from New York and The Thing. That same strain followed him into marriage. Russell wed actress Susan Hubley in 1979, and their son Boston was born in 1980. But the relationship collapsed by 1983 as long shoots and public exposure took their toll. The divorce coincided with career upheaval, even as he filmed Silkwood, leaving Russell privately shaken while his professional profile continued to rise. Physical consequences emerged more quietly. Years of stunt-heavy performances led to chronic back and joint injuries, conditions he has acknowledged in interviews while continuing demanding productions like Tombstone and Backdraft. The damage was cumulative, forcing him to rethink how long he could sustain the image that built his reputation. Today, Kurt Russell is 75 years old and still active, choosing selective roles in film and television while focusing on aviation and family life. With an estimated net worth of around $70 million, he stands as an actor whose legacy was shaped as much by personal cost as by the enduring shadow of Jack Burton. Kim Cattrall as Gracie Law. Kim Cattrall was born on August 21, 1956, in Liverpool, England. At 30 years old, she played Gracie Law, the sharp-witted, fearless lawyer in Big Trouble in Little China. Her presence anchored the film's chaos, giving it credibility through intelligence rather than brute force. That strength was forged early. Cattrall's family emigrated to Canada when she was 3 months old, facing persistent financial instability as her father struggled with employment. Isolation followed her into school, where she was bullied for her accent, an experience that hardened her resolve long before she gained recognition in films like Mannequin and later mainstream attention. Those unresolved pressures surfaced in her marriages. Cattrall married Larry Davis, then Andre J. Lyson, and later audio designer Mark Levinson, but all three unions ended in divorce. The breakdown of her third marriage in 2004 coincided with the peak of Sex and the City, a period when global fame amplified her private grief over infertility and emotional isolation. Health struggles followed with devastating timing. Cattrall has confirmed battles with depression, anxiety, chronic insomnia, and thyroid issues, conditions that intensified after the 2018 suicide of her brother. Even while managing these crises, she continued working on projects such as The Ghostwriter and later television roles, often while undergoing treatment and therapy. Now, Kim Cattrall is 70 years old and remains selectively active across television and stage. With an estimated net worth of about $60 million, she now works on her own terms, carrying the weight of Gracie Law's strength into a life shaped by loss, endurance, and hard-earned control. Dennis Dunn as Wong Chi. Dennis Dunn was born on April 19, 1952, in Stockton, California, United States. At 34 years old, he played Wong Chi, the grounded, morally driven warrior in Big Trouble in Little China. Unlike the film's boastful outsider hero, Wong Chi carried the emotional and cultural weight of the story, quietly anchoring its mythological chaos in discipline and purpose. That sense of restraint was forged early. Dunn grew up in a low-income immigrant neighborhood in Stockton as the son of a Chinese family, experiencing racial harassment at school and social exclusion in public spaces throughout the 1960s. These pressures pushed him toward martial arts and Chinese opera training, tools that later defined his screen presence in films such as Year of the Dragon and The Last Emperor. Stability at home did not mean absence of strain. Dunn married in the early 1980s and raised 2 children, but long stretches away for filming caused repeated family tension, especially during the mid to late 1980s when his career momentum peaked. While he maintained steady work in projects like Prince of Darkness and the NBC series Midnight Caller, the balance between professional survival and domestic presence remained fragile. Physically, Dunn avoided catastrophic illness, but the toll of stage combat and screen fighting accumulated over decades. Rehearsals, live theater performances, and action roles led to chronic joint strain, pushing him gradually away from film work and back toward theater, winning awards like A Language of Their Own. Today, Dennis Dunn is 74 years old and continues working primarily in theater and actor training. With an estimated net worth of approximately $5 million, his legacy rests not on box office dominance, but on quiet endurance. James Hong as David Lo Pan. James Hong was born on February 22, 1929, in Minneapolis, Minnesota, United States. At 57 years old, he played David Lo Pan, the ancient sorcerer split between frailty and terror in Big Trouble in Little China. His performance gave the film its mythic menace, proving that voice, timing, and presence could outweigh physical spectacle. That authority was earned the hard way. Hong was raised by Chinese immigrant parents during World War II, working in his family's restaurant while enduring racial abuse as often the only Asian child in school. Moving between the United States and Hong Kong in childhood fractured his sense of belonging. This tension later fueled his relentless work ethic across early roles and eventual recognition in films like Blade Runner. Behind the scenes, Hong's personal life demanded patience. He married Susan Tong in 1977, and their early years were marked by separation, as he juggled engineering work by day and acting by night. Even while appearing in dozens of productions annually, including Chinatown, maintaining family stability required sacrifice rarely visible to audiences. Health challenges surfaced with age but never halted him. Hong has acknowledged cardiovascular issues that required monitoring, yet he continued working into his 90s, including physically demanding voice sessions and live appearances. During this period, he delivered one of his most celebrated late-career performances in Everything Everywhere All at Once, earning a Screen Actors Guild Award as part of the ensemble. Now, James Hong is 97 years old and remains active, holding the distinction of one of Hollywood's longest-working actors with over 600 credited roles. With an estimated net worth of around $8 million, his life stands as a rare historical arc, from exclusion and caricature to recognition and honor, ending not in retirement, but in continued presence. Victor Wong as Egg Shen. Victor Wong was born on July 30, 1927, in San Francisco, California. At 59 years old, he played Egg Shen, the mystical sorcerer who jokes, warns, and ultimately protects in Big Trouble in Little China. His performance quietly anchors the film's supernatural logic, making its magic feel ancient and earned rather than decorative spectacle. That sense of gravity was forged early. Raised in San Francisco's Chinatown, poverty and exclusion forced Wong into work early. It shaped a resilience that later carried him across disciplines, first journalism and photojournalism, then acting. His intelligence surfaced in films like The Last Emperor and Tremors, roles that relied on presence rather than volume. As his career stabilized, his personal life proved less predictable. Wong married multiple times. His first marriage collapsed under professional strain and emotional distance, a rupture that carried consequences for his children as well. Later relationships offered more stability, but grief followed him closely, success never shielding him from sudden loss or the emotional weight of responsibility that came with age. That weight eventually became physical. Wong suffered multiple strokes and lived with chronic heart disease, conditions that slowed him but never erased his artistic drive. His final hours unfolded quietly and cruelly. After staying awake through the night of September 11, 2001, searching for news and fearing for loved ones, he suffered a fatal heart attack in the early morning of September 12th. He was 74 years old. At the time of his death, his net worth was estimated at around $2 million, modest for a man whose face and voice became part of cult cinema history. Kate Burton as Margot. Kate Burton was born on September 10, 1957, in Geneva, Switzerland. At 29 years old, she played Margot, the composed, rational counterweight to chaos, in Big Trouble in Little China. Her understated presence gives the film emotional balance, grounding fantasy with intelligence and restraint. That restraint was learned early. As the daughter of Richard Burton, she grew up surrounded by fame's volatility, alcoholism, fractured relationships, and the emotional instability that turns childhood into constant vigilance. Rather than implode under legacy, she disciplined herself through formal training, eventually carving a career that valued craft over notoriety, extending from theater to film and television. Stability arrived in her personal life where it often fails in Hollywood. She married theater director and producer Michael Ritchie, and together they raised 2 children. Yet even a strong marriage required endurance, balancing rehearsal rooms, long productions, and the quiet negotiations that keep a family intact while careers remain in motion. During this period, her professional stature deepened through demanding roles, including later television work such as Grey's Anatomy and Scandal. Illness entered her career not as biography, but as burdened narrative. Her portrayal of Ellis Grey, a brilliant surgeon undone by Alzheimer's, forced her to inhabit decline, memory loss, and generational fear with surgical precision. Repeatedly stepping into that psychological space left marks, blurring the line between performance and emotional labor, and drawing her into public conversations about caregiving and identity erosion. Today, Kate Burton is 69 years old, still alive, and still actively working across stage and screen. With a net worth estimated at around $5 million, her success is measured less in accumulation than in consistency. Peter Kwong as Rain. Peter Kwong was born on April 9, 1952, in Sacramento, California. At 34 years old, he played Rain, the silent, lethal enforcer of the 3 storms, in Big Trouble in Little China. His controlled physicality and cold stillness gave the film a sense of real danger, turning spectacle into threat. That intensity came from an early life marked by exclusion. Growing up as the son of Chinese immigrants in mid-century America, Kwong faced routine racial hostility at school and in public spaces, pressure that taught him to defend himself both physically and psychologically. Martial arts became structure and refuge, a discipline that later shaped his screen presence and helped him secure roles in action-driven projects such as The Golden Child and Invasion USA. As his career expanded, stability did not automatically follow. Kwong devoted himself almost entirely to work-form film, television, to stage. He appeared in more than 100 productions, a volume that left little room for a conventional family life. His colleagues noted the cost: long separations, constant reinvention, and the quiet loneliness that often shadows character actors who are visible but rarely centered. Health issues were never sensationalized, but time took its toll. Years of physically demanding roles and stunt work accumulated silently, and in later life, Kwong reduced his on-screen output while remaining active behind the scenes, serving on the boards of SAG-AFTRA and the Academy of Television Arts and Sciences, and advocating openly against anti-Asian stereotyping in Hollywood. On May 27, 2025, Peter Kwong died in his sleep in Burbank, California. He was 73 years old. His net worth at the time of his death was estimated at around $2 million, built steadily through decades of acting, teaching Tai Chi, and union service. James Pax as Lightning. James Pax was born on December 21, 1961, in New York City. At just 25 years old, he played Lightning, the swift, acrobatic member of the Three Storms, in Big Trouble in Little China. His speed and precision injected kinetic energy into the film, elevating the action from brawl to choreography. That agility was earned early. Raised in an urban environment by an English father and Chinese mother, Pax grew up navigating cultural division and economic pressure, learning quickly how to adapt without belonging fully anywhere. Music, dance, and martial arts became parallel paths of escape and discipline, eventually leading him from classical piano to kung fu, ballet, and professional performance. Adulthood brought constant motion rather than rest. Pax married and became a father, but his career pulled him across continents: Hollywood, Hong Kong, Japan, mainland China, making stability fragile and conditional. During this period, he appeared in projects such as Invasion USA, Kinjite, and later The Heroic Trio alongside Michelle Yeoh, proving his versatility while paying the price of distance. Physically, Pax endured the wear typical of multidisciplinary performers. Years of martial arts training, dance, and stunt-heavy roles demanded constant conditioning, and he gradually shifted toward producing and directing, a transition marked by intellectual rather than physical strain. His later work included the Discovery docudrama The First Emperor, which reached an 18% rating on Channel 4 UK, grounding his career in authorship rather than endurance. In 2026, James Pax is 65 years old and still alive, actively developing international film and television projects while preparing new directorial work. His net worth is estimated at approximately $1 million, accumulated across acting, producing, and media ventures. Suzee Pai as Miao Yin. Suzee Pai was born on August 8, 1962, in Toledo, Ohio. At 24 years old, she played Miao Yin, the hypnotic, green-eyed woman caught between desire and danger, in Big Trouble in Little China. Though her screen time was limited, her image became one of the film's most unforgettable visual symbols, blending beauty with unease. That image carried weight long before the camera rolled. Entering the fashion world as a young Asian American model in New York, Pai grew up under relentless pressure to conform to an industry that valued exoticism over identity. It pushed her into modeling, cheerleading for the Philadelphia Eagles Liberty Bells, and eventually adult editorial fame, including being named Penthouse Pet of the Month in January 1981. From there, acting followed almost naturally, but not gently. Pai appeared in Sharky's Machine, 1981, and filmed a controversial flashback scene opposite Sylvester Stallone in First Blood, 1982, a role as a Vietnamese prostitute that was ultimately cut from the theatrical release. The decision erased her from a major film moment, reinforcing a pattern where Asian women were visible, yet disposable, even as projects like Big Trouble in Little China briefly elevated her presence. Her personal life unfolded more quietly, but not without strain. Pai later married filmmaker Roland Joffé, a relationship that eventually ended in separation, shaped by divergent careers and prolonged distance. By the early 1990s, she made a decisive break, stepping away from acting altogether, choosing privacy over continued exposure in an industry that had never offered her control over her own narrative. Today, Suzee Pai is 64 years old and still alive, living largely out of the public eye. With an estimated net worth of around $2 million accumulated from modeling, acting, and long-term investments, her legacy is less about quantity than impact. She remains a reminder of how quickly Hollywood can spotlight a face, and how quietly it can let that face disappear. Chao-Li Chi as Uncle Chu. Chao-Li Chi was born on April 5, 1927, in Shanxi, China. At 59 years old, he played Uncle Chu, the soft-spoken shopkeeper whose calm masks deeper wisdom, in Big Trouble in Little China. His performance added texture rather than spectacle, grounding the film's chaos in lived experience. That composure was forged through upheaval. As a child, Chi fled wartime China in 1939 during the Japanese invasion, arriving in the United States as a refugee with his brother. Displacement, loss, and political instability defined his formative years, forcing him to rebuild identity in a foreign language and culture while carrying the memory of a homeland fractured by violence. Art became both refuge and discipline. Trained in dance, movement, and performance, Chi worked with experimental filmmaker Maya Deren in Meditation on Violence, 1948, then spent decades navigating American television and film. His most enduring role came as Chao-Li on Falcon Crest, where he appeared in more than 200 episodes, while later film work included The Joy Luck Club, 1993, and Wedding Crashers, 2005, bridging generations without ever becoming a headline name. His personal life reflected spiritual continuity rather than spectacle. A devoted Taoist, Chi co-founded a Taoist institute in Hollywood and taught philosophy and Tai Chi for decades at California State University and the Lee Strasberg Institute. Sadly, Chao-Li Chi died peacefully at his home in Granada Hills, California, on October 16, 2010, at the age of 83. His net worth at death was estimated at around $1 million, modest for a career spanning more than half a century. Jeff Imada as Needles. Jeff Imada was born on June 17, 1955, in Inglewood, California. At 31 years old, he played Needles, the knife-wielding street thug whose brief appearance adds a jolt of real-world menace in Big Trouble in Little China. Though a minor role on screen, his physical credibility helped sell the film's urban danger before the fantasy fully takes over. That credibility was forged early. Growing up in a rough environment, Imada turned to martial arts as a way to survive school bullying and street intimidation, beginning formal training at age 15. Discipline replaced fear, and control replaced chaos, patterns that later defined both his life and career as his skills opened doors that words alone never could. From there, his professional path shifted decisively behind the scenes. Imada became one of Hollywood's most respected stunt performers and fight coordinators, contributing to over 100 productions. During this period, he worked on projects such as They Live, 1988, and Blade, 1998, while also serving as a close friend and collaborator of Brandon Lee, eventually becoming the primary fight choreographer on Lee's final film, The Crow. That level of physical commitment came at a cost. Years of high-risk stunt work resulted in cumulative injuries, aches, joint damage, and long-term wear that quietly reshape a performer's body over time. Rather than retreat, Imada adapted, moving into choreography, technical advising, and authorship, including publishing one of the first U.S. books on the balisong, preserving knowledge earned through pain and precision. Today, Jeff Imada is 71 years old and still alive, continuing to work selectively while teaching and consulting. His net worth is estimated at around $5 million, built through decades of stunt work, coordination, and intellectual contributions to martial arts cinema. Jerry Hardin as the Pinstripe Lawyer. Jerry Hardin was born on November 20, 1929, in Dallas, Texas. At 57 years old, he played the Pinstripe Lawyer, the smooth, unsettling legal face of Chinatown authority, in Big Trouble in Little China. His calm delivery adds a layer of institutional threat, reminding the audience that danger doesn't always arrive shouting. That restraint was born in scarcity. Growing up during the Great Depression, Hardin knew economic instability firsthand, a reality that sharpened his observational skills and emotional economy. Early exposure to church performances and school plays offered escape, eventually leading him from Texas to formal training at the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art in London. Returning to the United States, Hardin built a formidable career piece by piece. By the 1960s, he had amassed over 75 theater credits, and by the 1990s, more than 100 film and television appearances. During this long middle stretch, he appeared in films such as Cujo, 1983, and The Firm, 1993, the latter performance directly inspiring the creation of his iconic role as Deep Throat on The X-Files. While his career expanded, his personal life remained unusually stable for the industry. Married since 1959 to acting teacher Diane Hardin, he raised 2 children, including actress Melora Hardin. Yet age imposes its own challenges. Long shooting days became harder. Memory and stamina required management, and roles gradually shifted from physical presence to moral authority. In 2026, Jerry Hardin is 97 years old and still alive, one of the oldest living character actors of his generation. His net worth is estimated at approximately $4 million, accumulated through steady work rather than blockbuster fame. His legacy lies in endurance. Al Leong as Wing Kong Hatchet Man. Al Leong was born on September 30th, 1952, in St. Louis, Missouri. At 34 years old, he played a Wing Kong Hatchet Man, the silent, blade-carrying enforcer who turns Chinatown into a killing ground, in Big Trouble in Little China. His presence sharpens the film's threat level instantly. That intensity was shaped early by exclusion. Growing up as a Chinese American in the Midwest and later in Los Angeles, Leong faced routine racial hostility that taught him how quickly perception could harden into danger. When his family moved west in 1962, he found refuge in discipline rather than dialogue, training in traditional kung fu under Grandmaster Yue Wong. That training became a career, though rarely with his name above the title. Throughout the late 1980s and 1990s, Leong became Hollywood's go-to henchman, appearing in landmark action films like Lethal Weapon, 1987, and Die Hard, 1988. Roles so brief yet precise they etched themselves into pop memory. Between those films and others such as They Live, 1988, his body language did the acting, proving menace could be communicated without dialogue. But the cost arrived quietly. In 1993, Leong was diagnosed with brain cancer, a life-threatening blow that halted momentum and forced a reckoning with mortality. A stroke followed in 2005, compounding the physical toll already accumulated from years of stunt work, falls, impacts, and repeated trauma. Today, Al Leong is 74 years old and still alive, long retired from on-camera work, but firmly embedded in cult cinema history. His net worth is commonly estimated around $3 million, earned through decades of acting and stunt coordination rather than leading man paychecks. Nearly 4 decades later, the magic, danger, and faces of Big Trouble in Little China haven't faded. They've aged, endured, and in some cases survived battles far tougher than anything on screen. From cult heroes to quiet disappearances, this cast tells a story far bigger than one film. So which transformation shocked you the most? The ones who vanished, or the ones still standing in 2026? If you enjoyed this Big Trouble in Little China, 1986 versus 2026, cast, then and now, deep dive, hit like, subscribe, and tell us in the comments which cast story you want uncovered next.